This section is about identifying international public procurement opportunities. Oriel is going to do a part of this section as well. So I'm just going to go quickly through what I think is important issues and so forth. We look where we can identify these opportunities, but we'll also look at some of the other issues around that, because, you know, it's okay to identify where the opportunities are, but if you don't know what to do, what's the point? I could show you 1,000 tenders, but if you don't know what to do with those tenders, what's the point of showing them in the first place? And there's certain things that companies need to do, organizations need to do, in order to get involved in international procurement. So, why do we get involved in international tenders, cross-border tenders? Why? This we have to tell our companies. In Ireland, for example, we're trying to tell our companies why they should be involved. So it is about trying to market this whole idea, this whole concept. Because a lot of companies, for example, want to remain in France or Spain and just do tenders in their own locality. But in reality, you know, there is a lot of opportunities out there. And obviously, the important thing is there's many more opportunities out there. For example, we've sort of identified there's about 200,000 public sector opportunities every day. 200,000. So that's a lot of opportunities. It's a strategy to overcome periods of domestic recession. So maybe there isn't too much work in your country. Maybe there's not many opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities globally. Potential to grow and expand globally using our experience. Okay. What we find is a lot of the work that we maybe do, for example, is repeated from one country and then done in a company close by and so forth. So this is how we get a lot of our business. So for example, my company, we've worked in over 100 different countries. And a lot of the work is repeated in some ways. You know, I talked to some of the other things. Less competition in some of the markets. It's relatively easy. I know people might say it's relatively easy to identify where the opportunities are and list are. And Oriel, I know, I've seen Oriel's presentation, and I know he's going to show you where some of those opportunities are as well. So, why concentrate on one market when there's so many opportunities in other markets? And what I would say to you, it's sometimes easier for me to win work in a foreign country than it is to win work back in Ireland. So we focus mainly, in the last 30 years we've been doing this, we focus mainly on international markets rather than focus on the Irish market. Okay? But before we identify these opportunities, I think the important thing is the company should have developed a business plan, a policy and strategy. Too often companies say, oh, it would be nice to work internationally, but they haven't decided why they want to do this. It's a nice idea. But the reality is, they haven't developed a policy or strategy. I can say, for example, I can say we got involved in an Italian company, a very large Italian company, Almaviva, from you know them. They came to us, said, let's try and do international work together. The reality is, their board hadn't really committed to doing work internationally. And I would say, for a period of time, they really failed. And in fact, we decided not to work with them any longer because nobody was committed. Right now, I'm talking to a UK company who says they want to get involved in the whole financial markets, doing this international stuff. But I know, for example, it's taken them over 1 month to come back with their project references. If it takes you 1 month to do that, you're not really committed. So that's the important thing. If you are going to identify a company to be involved in this here, if you're going to identify companies that you want to take forward, make sure they've got a business plan. Make sure they really want to go international. Okay, they might say they want it, but make sure that the senior management, the senior board, and all the rest are fully supportive of this idea. And there's ways to find out why they're supportive and so forth. You have to decide, target the sector you want to be involved in. It has to be a long-term strategy. Determine the regions. Okay, it's going to be Western Europe, it's going to be Africa, it's going to be somewhere else. You know, what we tend to do is we tend to follow where the money is going. For example, we do a lot of work with the European Commission. So, 10 years ago, a lot of money was going to places like Hungary and Poland and so forth. So we went there. It went into Romania, Bulgaria, we went there. And now it's going into Africa. So that's where we're focusing on for our business. So, important also to visit the country or region. If you're going to do work for somebody, it doesn't matter if it's the UK or it's France or wherever, you should go and visit the country. At least know what's happening and so forth. And in fact, when we first started off 30 years ago, we would never tender unless we actually visit the country. So we were doing a job in Poland, we wouldn't enter that job or tender for that work unless we visit Poland first of all, determine what the priorities were, determine what the requirements were, and so forth. That's when we moved in. Now that might not be possible, but I'm just saying if you want to be the lead and so forth, you need to visit the country. And visit the IFIs or the clients to get a better idea and understanding there. So we had a sort of policy of visit before visiting. It's not always possible. And what I can say now is, we've done this for 30 years. We have our reference and so forth. We don't need to do as much of that. But I think if you're a new company, you certainly need to do that. So this is not. So some of the other things you need to do before you decide to go after these opportunities. Develop your references, your product references. And I would say for most companies, that's one of the top priorities. So the first question, if you want to have a partner, for example, is you're going to be asked to show what have you done before. So that's a priority. We did an exercise this morning, for example, there, and we talked about this company LED. They hadn't really demonstrated in a reference that they could do this type of work. So that's a priority. And we look for local and international partners. So the sort of stuff we're doing across border, you have to start looking for your local and your international partners. So if you're only starting off, this is your first time involved in tendering, go in as a junior partner. Do not try and lead a consortium, because you have to have a track record. You might be lucky, but generally it takes a bit of time to build up those references and experience and so forth. Another important one, for example, is submit a number of expression of interest in tenders. What you find a lot of companies, if they fail the first time, they decide, we're not going to do that again. We're going to come back to our home market again. So you have to be prepared. I said before, this is a strategy. This is a long-term strategy. You have to be prepared to lose sometimes in order to win in the future. And again, I think we said this morning as well, don't give up after the first loss, but review the reasons why you lost. So primary university have a service, tender review service. So review why you might have lost it. We lost this work.
Have you constructed the tender reviews?
We're going to do it ourselves. No. It is
under the PPACT project.
Under the PPACT program, yeah. But this is something, companies should be doing anyhow. There's not much point just doing the same thing and failing and expect to do the same again and have success there. That's not going to happen. You have to review why you've made those losses. Okay? So just get an idea of the size of the market is out there. We sort of reckon that in working with the IFI, which is the World Bank, and EC, and the size of the market is about 1 trillion per annum. So that's a pretty sizable market. Okay? And that's funded, EC, World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, a whole list of some of the organizations. That's bilaterals as well. And bilaterals I mean like DFID, for example, from the UK, Irish Aid, for example, Spanish obviously funding some international business, French as well, GIZ and so on. What we see that a lot of organizations are only going after Horizon 2020. Horizon 2020 is only 8% of the EC budget. So the other 92% of the EC budget, we don't see too many companies going after that. And I think that's a big area where, I'm not saying all the 92% is relevant to people here, for example, but it certainly is an area, some of that is much more commercial. And that's an area that we go after some of that. So coming on to the second area and probably it's more relevant to the project, the PPACT project and all the rest of it, through the EC 28 national regional programs, somebody has estimated around about 2.4 trillion per annum. So that's a fairly sizable market. Okay. I think probably a more difficult market to break into, but maybe not if you have the right sort of partners. These are much more commercial projects. They're fully funded. So this just gives you a bit of an idea of the number of tenders that are out there, for example. So over 1 trillion in the IFI side, so you can see World Bank, UN, EIB, Asian Development Bank, and so forth. The bilateral funding such as GIZ. So we reckon there's about 5,000 new tenders every day. Every day there's 200,000, but out of those 200,000, there's 5,000 new tenders every day. So if you cannot find an opportunity there, you're probably not looking hard enough. And maybe one of the things I want to say here now is that there is no such thing as a perfect tender. Okay, a lot of companies look for what we would term the perfect tender, the one that sits nicely for their company. You're not going to find that. You have to be much more flexible, you have to be more broader thinking, and this is where partnership and all the rest comes in, because you might be able to do all of that tender, but you can actually do a small part of it. Like I can say to you, my company is only a company of 8 people. That's all we have. But we've worked in so many different companies because we're partnered with different people. And that's how the win international business is. So the tenders from 140 different donor companies, much more commercial. So you can see this is very much on top markets and all the rest of it by national companies and organizations.
So then what are the donor agencies?
Donor agencies are people like the World Bank and EDC, people. So they're IFIs. Okay. So why do you want to go with these? I think this is important to give a bit of backdrop and all the rest. It's important to understand why companies should be involved in these markets. It's not about trying to, looking at tenders, if I can do that tender, but there's certain things, prerequisites that you need to do. So, reason to target international procurement projects are transfer relevant experience. So we all have experience, all our companies have experience and all that stuff. So that's relevant to other countries, to other products. It's a market entry strategy. So for example, public sector procurement, if we do a job, doesn't matter where it is, be it in Hungary or Poland, for example, if it's public in the public sector, we can nearly be sure we're going to get paid for that. It's a good way to go into it as a market entry strategy as well there, because it's a priority sector that has been determined by the government or by the funder. Use of shortlisting, so it's very transparent. The process, people might say there's obviously corruption and all the rest out there, but generally it's a pretty transparent process. Advances are available up to 60%. A lot of the projects we do, for example, we get advances of 60%. So from a cash flow point of view, it's pretty good. And the fact you generally get payments are secure, it's a good way to be. Rather than trying to go through a private sector project or whatever, and maybe not getting paid, for example, that we're always sure you're getting paid. The procedures are common, so it doesn't matter if we're looking at an EC funded project in Egypt or one in Italy or Denmark, for example, the procedure is generally the same. You're not having to relearn a number of different procedures. To be able to work for all sizes. If you look at the 200,000 tender we talk about, for example, it could be for one individual, it could be for a small, it could be a very small project, it could be a very large project. Across all different sectors, for infrastructure build, for the supply side, or for services. So the problem in Egypt, we look at projects in terms of, okay?
English language have advantage, maybe for you, for the rest.
Sorry, oh yeah, sorry, that's for us. But I'm saying, you take it, what about the Spanish side? In Latin America, for example, that's your advantage. In French-speaking West Africa, that's an advantage for France. And for Italy. Italy.
Thank you. Well, we've always done Patagonia.
I don't know about Wales though.
Patagonia?
Oh, Patagonia. Yeah. So, those are just some of the ones. I'm just going to have the Irish side of the. Let's go on. So, remember I said there's 200,000 tenders. This is sort of a breakdown of the tenders. So, people are able to identify where those tenders and all the rest are in the public sector. So, for example, you can see all the different sectors. It's just a sample. We can even identify what national tenders were available on that day as well. So, for example, there's ICT, for example, in Ireland that day is 114, Romania was 757. Health sector, there's 54 in Ireland. That particular day, there was 1,594 health-related sector tenders. Okay, so let's talk about ICT. I said it was 13,000 that particular day. We can even identify in what areas those tenders were related to. Some were on the services side, some were on the supply side, and so forth. And that particular day, we had 1,265 in Poland, we had 2,391 in France, Romania 757 on that ICT related projects in public procurement. So those are all together. So if you have partners, for example, in France, we could maybe, given our skills, we could partner with a French colleague organization to go after some of that business. Just to give you an idea of some of the tenders. We look at tenders, for example, we have a service, my company, for example, we get about between 30 and 40 or 50 tenders per day, for example, look at. We have them sort of mapped out for ourselves, and this is how they go down on a regional basis. So we would have a service, for example, with 40 or 50 tenders that we would have every day with a potential interest to ourselves out of those 200,000 public sector tenders. So we have them profiled and all the rest of our organizations. This should give you an idea of how some of the performance that you see. We in Ireland, for example, are doing very badly. Let's see, the Italians are doing very well. Okay.
Seamus,
Can you put the other chart? The back. The one.
This one.
No, the other one. No.
Well,
With the example.
Oh, the Italian one, yeah.
yeah.
This is actually from the World Bank. The World Bank has given this out.
For you, it's changed in Italy, yeah.
So the Italians
For
are.
you, why Italy is first?
No, and Spain is the second.
Well, it's funny enough, when you think about this here, this is a very interesting chart there because the countries that had a lot of problems during the EC, like the Greeks, for example, are doing very well. The Spanish are doing well. The Italians are doing well. We in Ireland, we're doing very badly. Yet now we speak English. A lot of the tenders are English now, and we're still with it. So that shows you how bad we really are. Okay?
Even Wales, but it's 3, 4, 5, 6.
So you see Greece is well up there as well. So they're involved very much in doing a lot of international business now. So if you're working for the World Bank or European Commission, you're used to working international. So this indicates the countries that are working internationally. Italians are, Spanish are, and all the rest of it. So when you're thinking about finding a partner to go and work with you in Germany or Austria and all the rest of it, you've already got organizations who are doing international work. Doing international work might be doing it, say, in South America, maybe doing Africa and all that, but they're still engaged in overseas business. So all the companies there, for example, we can identify a lot of those companies there. Those are potential partners for somebody who wants to move into those international projects and so forth, national tenders and so on. So this is an idea. This is sort of a service we have, for example. Now, the only thing I'm trying to point out here, for example, is that when we look at the tenders, for example, some are not very large, but what strikes out there is it's not in one sector. The tender that comes out will require you to have skill sets in different areas. It might be in trade, it might be. So that's why I'm saying if you're an ICT company, like us, for example, there isn't a tender sitting out there just for ICT and nothing else. It could be ICT in aviation, it could be ICT in health or whatever. So that's why we don't have the expertise in health. So we need to go and find somebody who has that health sector expertise. And that's why you need partners, and that's why you need to collaborate. So we have this service, and we have, let's say, 30 or 40 profile for ourselves. And at the end of the week, we've determined that we partner for such and such. We would maybe have 7 or 8 tenders we said opportunity we might go after, for example, we maybe at the end of the day we might put an expression of interest in for 3 or 4 projects. And out of that then we hopefully shortlist for a number of tenders. But one thing I'll say here now, for example, is it's important that you put an expression of interest, that you actually go to bid. And don't just look at this here and say, well, I'm not going to bid. This is all a numbers game. To win international business or whatever, to win any tender, you have to be bidding all the time. And the problem, as I've seen, for example, a lot of companies is they make excuses why they're not going to bid. Okay? They say that, it's not the best tender for me. The important thing is, when we see something like this, for example, we determine what element can we do and where can we find a partner who can help us do the rest of the tender. So that's why it's important to find good partners, local and international. Tracking, okay, so we'll just show the pictures. As I say, what we've done in ConsultIRE now, we've looked at all these, I think Oriel's going to talk about all these different services that are out there. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at the best features and so forth, and we're developing our own internal tracking system, tender tracking system, and all the rest of it to go after this. Okay? So things like translation of tenders and so forth, greater number of filters and so on. So that's the sort of stuff that we're trying to work on. I'm just trying to see. Now, I said before, to me the most important thing for all your companies is references. Okay? And there is a standard format and all the rest of it. We can show you those for the European Commission type format or the World Bank type format. And I think this is the sort of thing that we will ask companies to do. In Ireland, we have a number of what we call tender teams or bidding teams across different sectors. And the first thing we ask companies to do is to fill in their references. This is really your calling card. This shows you where all your experience and expertise is. And if I want to find a partner in Spain, or I want to find a partner in France, for example, or Italy, the first thing they will ask me is, show me what you've done before. So we have a whole list of projects and all the rest of that. And for each one of those projects, this is a list of my projects there, okay? So just one line, for example. There. But for every one of those one lines, I've got one of those. Okay, so it's a job in Hungary, for example. I can tell you where I've worked in Hungary before, and I can show you what the work entails. So that's one of the most important things. The first thing is obviously you have your strategy and so forth. But this is probably from an operational point of view. This is very, very important. Because I wouldn't partner with anybody unless I seen this, unless they could show me what they've done before. And that's a template. That's an EC template. And I think if you're going to have any template or standardized one, this is a pretty good template.
It's the same of European.
Same as European. They're exactly the same.
It's the same.
Yeah. The World Bank is a slightly different one there, but I think this covers everything. This tells you the name of the company, where you worked. Okay, in this case, Croatia, the size of the project there, what portion you carried out, how many experts had you on it there, who was your client, who funded it, what dates, was there any other consortium members there, generally what the project was about, and specifically what you did yourself. So I think that tells you everything. More or less tells you everything else, what you require. Just to explain some more stuff. I'm trying to go through because I realize we're running out of time now. So let's just give you an idea of some of the funding and so forth. So this section is about identifying opportunities. So I'm going to show you where we try and find all our opportunities and so forth. Okay? So obviously there is, if you go to the EC websites and all that, you'll be able to find where all the tenders are. You go to the nice little section where the nice little tenders are. There is what's called, Oriel is going to tell me this, specialist data vendors. They will amalgamate all the information there together. So there's things like, I think I mentioned DevX, development aid, the sorters, tender, info, and all those sort of, there's so many of them. Where else can you find opportunities? Visit EC in Brussels there to find out where the opportunities are. EC delegations, company visits, the embassies. We talk to embassies a lot and all the rest of it. Government agencies, we talk to people in the likes of the EBRD, our directors in the EBRD, and see what might be there as well. Chambers, LinkedIn, Google, these are just other areas that we find some opportunities. The last one, for example, there are ICT multinationals. We talk to the likes of HP, Oracle, or Microsoft, because they know what's going on in other countries. We're involved in writing tender specifications to the European Commission, for example. So if we can give them some information, they can give us some information back in. Because they're interested. What tenders are we writing? What are we telling the country to do and so forth? And then they can go after those tenders. So there is so many other ways of finding where all these opportunities are. I think Victoria's going to explain a little bit more detail. Just determine what IFI you want to work with, or what company needs some of the points and so forth. Monitoring the different opportunities. As I said before, I think I already was talking about this here as well. You can get some of this information for free, but the problem is, if you want to go after the World Bank, go to the World Bank website, there's Economic Development Bank, UN, there's so many sites and all the rest of it. But these data vendors will bring them together. So if you look at the second line, for example, things like Assortis, DevX, Tender Info, we've tried a lot of these different vendors. They don't provide all the information, but at least they can provide some of the information. So we're trying to do now, we're trying to bring some of the information together. The more relevant stuff. How else can you find some of these opportunities? Maybe through your local partners. If we have a local partner in France or whatever, or we have one in Romania, for example, we ask them what sort of tenders are coming up. International partners do the same sort of thing. Country visits, so we're visiting a country, we will go and see the different ministries and so on to see what's possible. In-country ministries are probably one of the best options. So those are just some of the ways of monitoring different opportunities. Okay, so that's just a bit of an overview. So I think, in summary, the important thing is make sure that the company has a strategy. If we're going to help people through this PPACT notice to get them to tender on us, make sure they have a strategy that wants to go international. Doesn't want to stay in Spain or just stay in France, for example. They want to do cross-border work and so forth. How can you see they're committed? You can see they're committed if they will do their references and so forth. If they're prepared to put together all their product references, then you know, for example, A, they have the experience, and B, they're committed to maybe to go and get involved in some of these tender groups and so on. As I say, there's lots of opportunities out there. There's 200,000, we said, just alone in the public every day. So there's no such thing as not being enough opportunities. There's plenty of opportunities. It's just how you go after those opportunities. Also think that this is international business, so you need to collaborate with international partners, local and other partners. As well as that, it's not just your sector. A lot of these tenders go across different sectors, so you need to partner up with people in different sectors. If I'm in the ICT sector, and I'm going to have somebody, I need to find people in other sectors, be it in the agri-food sector, be it in the health sector, or whatever. So that's important. Just say, what we're doing right now, we're building up what we call tender teams, bidding teams. So we have a number of organisations in Ireland, and we're trying to bring them together to bid. Initially, we're putting them in certain sectors. Let's say the ICT sector. You have somebody maybe in the health sector, for example. That's the first stage. The second stage then will be to bring some of those together to multi-sectoral teams. The next stage then will be to introduce them to international partners. Part of the PPACT idea and so forth. So that's then, hopefully then, in a year's time or two years or whatever, these same companies who have never done this work before will then become the lead firms in some of these international tenders. But the one thing is, in order to be involved in this here, you have to bid. And we've seen so many companies, for example, who just make excuses and so on. We just signed up an agreement with the Hungarian government. And the one thing about them is, I think they've put in something like over 100 expressions of interest. They've been shortlisted for about 25, and they've won 16. So that's a pretty good record and so forth. The only way they're doing that is because they're actually bidding. And I think if this group is to be successful and all the rest of it, we will have to bid. It's not, I think that's the important thing. We have to push the companies to bid. We have to find the companies, first of all, who will be involved, and also we have to ensure that they will bid.